Welcome to the December subscription tasting video. Again, without friends, the pandemic seems to be carrying on, so I'm all by myself, but I hope you can cope with that. Today we're gonna taste 3 different coffees that we're sending out to all our subscribers, or most of our subscribers at least, in the first Wednesday of the month, which is now December. Merry Christmas, everyone. We normally would choose 3 different coffees, but you can subscribe to up to 6 bags. So that means you would normally get 2 bags of one coffee, 2 bags of another coffee, and 2 bags of a third coffee. And today we're going to talk about a coffee that is very special to me. And yeah, let's just get onto it, I think. So the first coffee we're going to taste is actually, and that we're sending out to all our 1 bag and I guess 4 bag subscribers, is Bourbon coffee. It's from El Salvador and it's from our friend Gilberto Baranoa, who very sadly passed away this year. This is actually, in my opinion, probably the best coffee ever produced while I knew him. I started meeting him in 2010, I think, or I bought his coffee for the first time in 2010. So when I was visiting him in February for the last time, that was our kind of 10-year anniversary. And normally I would cup most of his coffees every year, at least his kind of top coffees. And I think this year the coffee was better than ever, because he had done a lot of things to his farm to improve it. So he had a new agronomist, they had been treating the trees better, the soil better, and you could see the results, not just from that 1 year, but they had been working on that for a couple of years in order to kind of improve the quality of the coffee and not just all the other stuff on the farm. Now, Los Pirineos is a farm located on top of a volcano in Usulután. It's close to a small town called Berlin, like in Berlin, in El Salvador. And by that town there's a volcano called the Tacapa volcano, and the farm is actually on top of that volcano. So it's a beautiful farmhouse that he just finished refurbishing a couple of years ago. And he had, I guess, a wonderful mill, very, very clean mill where he could produce naturals, honey processed coffees, washed coffees. In the later years also these kind of crazy anaerobic coffees. He would ferment in refrigerated containers, and so on. And he also loved to plant a lot of different varieties, and I think the last list I saw he had close to 50 different varieties on his farm. And a couple of years ago we actually cupped through most of them to kind of select the better ones. Still, one of my favorite varieties on this farm is actually a traditional Bourbon that he calls, or he used to call Bourbon Elite, because it was the first Bourbon that was planted on the farm many, many, many years ago. I think he was the 3rd generation coffee farmer. And this plant was also used by the El Salvadoran coffee organization called Procafé in order to develop a new type of Bourbon called Tequisik, which is kind of it's a lower plant and that's supposed to produce more than the traditional Bourbon. So this coffee for me was actually the reason why I started buying coffee from Gilberto back in the days. I actually bought it on a Cup of Excellence auction, I think it was 2010. And I think he came 30th place back then. But I really liked that coffee. It was very different from the other coffees, so decided to buy it. And the next year I went to visit and we just, connected straight away. And ever since I've been buying his coffee every year and also trying to work together with him in order to develop new processes, improve the quality, and so on. So it was a joy to know Don Gilberto, but unfortunately he's no longer with us. What I can say is that he was living his dream to the very end, so it was quite nice to visit him in February and see that he actually was staying more at the farm and really doing what he loved to do. The good news is that he has 2 lovely kids and they're taking over the farm. So I hope these coffees will be available to us also in the future, and I'm pretty sure they will be actually. Let's taste the coffee. Yes, So this is not our kind of typical profile for our coffees. You know, a lot of people think of our coffees as always being very fruity, like Kenyan, Ethiopian coffees, but we do also buy a lot of other coffees. And this for me is more like our Brazilian style coffee because it's very low acidity. It has a lot of this kind of chocolate, mouth-filling chocolate creaminess, and a little bit of nuts, and also a little bit of kind of dried fruit flavor this year. Funnily enough, when you cup these coffees when they're very fresh, they always have this kind of slight floral notes, but that tends to disappear once the coffee is rested a little bit. What I really like about this Bourbon Elite is its sweetness. And of course, it's a washed process, so not in a traditional way, because Gilberto had the mechanical demucilage machines. So that means the mucilage on the beans were actually removed mechanically in a kind of centrifuge machine, and that means you use much less water, but the coffee still ends up very clean, and it's kind of not fermented at all. It's just cleaned and then dried straight away on raised beds under shade. So for me, very, very clean coffee, very sweet, has this kind of syrupy mouthfeel and very chocolatey flavors. I love that. Let's have a little bit more. And then coffee number 2 is also from Los Pirineos, and probably one of the best Pacamaras I've tasted from the farm, except from some of his Cup of Excellence winning lots. And of course, Gilberto loved to compete in the Cup of Excellence, and I think he has the record of having the most coffees into the actual auction. So I don't know how many he ended up having in the auction before he died, but I think it was close to 20 coffees. You know, year after year after year, he would be either top 10 or, you know, among the best coffees. So let's taste that. So coffee number 2, Pacamara. It's a very different variety. It's a mix of Pacas. Pacas is actually a Bourbon mutation, meaning the plants mutated, or one plant mutated, and a family which surname is Pacas, also in El Salvador. They planted more of this plant because it was much shorter, so easier to pick, and it also produced well. And it turned out to be a stable variety. So Pacas is very similar genetically to Caturra, for instance. So that's one of the kind of mothers of Pacamara. The other one is Maragogipe, which is a plant that is, I think it's a typica plant, but the beans are huge. So you can see on the Pacamara beans, they're much bigger than the Bourbon beans. And it tends to have a very interesting flavor, I think. Lots of fruit here, stone fruit. And this is honey processed. It's quite a clean honey process. Still, you can taste a little bit of that kind of, I would say, warm, almost overripe fruit flavor that you get from normally honey processed or natural coffees. But it's quite an interesting profile. It reminds me of these kind of fruits you get in Colombia, like guanábana, or it can be these guava fruits or something like that. Very kind of tropical stone fruit, very sweet, delicious coffee. Now, they're both grown on the same farm, but the Bourbon Elite is actually growing on top of the farm. The Pacamara is planted a little bit lower, but that's not necessarily a bad sign. Actually, in Honduras, where Marisabel and Moises are growing Pacamara, the Pacamara tends to taste better in lower altitudes than higher. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. And I'm not sure if this is the case on all other farms. I'm just saying that the Pacamara actually performs really well also on Gilberto's farm, which is a little bit lower altitude. So first 2 coffees from Los Pirineos, our beloved friend who is no longer with us, Gilberto Baranoa. This was his last harvest, and it was probably the best one as well. And the third coffee, since it's Christmas, we're actually sending out a Christmas coffee. And I thought it would be a nice contrast, because if you have all 3 coffees, the first 2 ones for me are really kind of nice coffees to start the day with. They're very sweet, they're uncomplicated, just sweet, delicious, a little bit more fruit in this cup, a little bit less in that one. The third one is a little bit more high acidity. And it's a Kenyan coffee. We actually sent it out a little bit earlier this year. It's from a group of farmers in Kenya called Warenew. And they are kind of trying to be organic farmers. They use a very interesting, what they call single stem system, where they can grow up to, or produce up to 100 kilos of cherry per tree. Some of them claim to be even doing more. And I've seen it with my own eyes. It's incredible. You can just see the trees are full of coffee cherries. And this is important because it means that a coffee farmer, without having to expand the land he owns or buy more land, he can actually, increase his production by tenfolds, because the average production in Kenya is around 2 kilos per tree. So when you can increase that to 100 kilos per tree, that's very, very important. So Warenew, it's mainly SL28 varieties, but also Ruiru 11 varieties. And this is normally a mix of coffee from slightly lower altitudes and slight higher altitudes. And that's just because the group only has one wet mill, which is really, really nice and clean. But they have to kind of mix cherries from all the farmers who deliver cherries every single day. So hopefully in the future they can build a wet mill that's a little bit closer to the lower altitudes, because the mill now is actually on the higher altitudes. So then you might be able to separate the qualities. It's not the typical Kenyan coffee, I would say, like the ones we normally buy. It's a little bit lower acidity and has this kind of vanilla-like aromas. And it's very refreshing and very nice. And I know I sent this out just a couple of months ago, but this shows how Kenyan coffee actually normally develops into becoming more delicious after resting a little bit. Normally when the coffees are a little fresh, they tend to be a little closed and maybe a little green. And I remember this being slightly more herbal when it was fresher. And now it's more kind of winey and opened up a little bit and have more fruit. Very, very clean, very nice, refreshing acidity without being overpowering. There's still a lot of fruit flavor, sweetness, and especially when you compare it to this, I guess. You can feel the Los Pirineos Bourbon is so thick in the mouth and so creamy. All this is much kind of more slim and elegant and more tea-like, but in a good way, like black tea with a lot of fruit. Let's taste the Pacamara. Also very kind of thick and creamy mouthfeel. And the Kenyan being so refreshing. And at least here in Norway during Christmas, we tend to eat a lot of very comforting food that's very, fatty and rich. So having maybe some more chocolatey and sweet in the morning and then a little bit more refreshing after dinner, for me, is perfect. So that's why I wanted to send this out. After all, it's Christmas. And 3 very nice coffees that I will enjoy definitely during Christmas. And we're starting off sending this to our subscribers only, because at least the Pacamara is not available yet, but it will be for sure later in the year for sale in our web shop and in our store as well. I hope you enjoy these coffees. If you have any questions, please comment in the comment section below. If you want to learn more about the coffees or the farms, we do have some more info on our webpage, so you can go there, check it out. You can also check out our subscriptions and other stuff that we sell. And we also have brewing videos, brewing tips. You can also check that out on YouTube in case you want to learn how to brew these coffees. I brew these coffees by using our standard AeroPress recipe. I think it's a fantastic recipe that really makes the coffees shine in an uncomplicated way. Remember, making good coffee is easy. Just get good beans, good water, and clean equipment, and you're halfway there. Maybe 90% there. Cool, so what's left to say? Merry Christmas. I hope you enjoyed the coffee. See you next year. And thanks for watching. Thanks for following us this year. And we hope to be able to give you more exclusive and delicious coffee experiences in the year to come.